What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Opposition Preview. I'm joined by a very special guest, Sam, from the Back of the Net YouTube channel, not Back of the Nest. I've been repeating it to myself for the last 5 minutes or so to look ahead to the game against Bournemouth on the weekend. As always, if you guys do enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on future Palace content as well. Sam, thank you for coming back on the channel. I think it's actually your first appearance. I'm saying back on the channel, but we tried to organize something earlier on in the season, but I think the timing it didn't work out as far as I can remember.
Yeah, you know what? It feels like I've been on Back of the Nest loads of times, but it's not. It's Back of the Net, and you're right. Those names are so simple. I swear we get loads of DMs that are meant for you. Sometimes it often happens.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you for coming onto the channel. It's a pleasure always talking to you on the 12-Man podcast. Bournemouth. You know what I want to start with Bournemouth. I was telling you before we actually started recording as well. Bournemouth about 2 to 3 months ago, it was a conversation of who joins Bournemouth in the relegation. Who's the bottom 3 teams going down? We know that Bournemouth's going down, and who else is joining Bournemouth? But I think it's incredible where you guys have come from to where you are right now, pushing right behind Chelsea, comfortably stayed up, not leaving it to the final day of the season. So what has changed over the last few months? Because I remember even when Palace faced Bournemouth, and I'll be honest, it was a very comfortable victory. That was probably one of our most easiest victories all season long. So what has changed?
Yeah, I mean, post World Cup, we were pretty awful. We hadn't won in 9 games. And Gary O'Neill was up against it because he, before the World Cup, he was caretaker manager, but they upgraded him to head coach as it was. And we just weren't, well, we had a few injuries and a few things, but like mentality seemed to be on the floor a little bit. And then we got some new transfers in through the January deadline on deadline day and throughout the window that really helped. Whether Gary O'Neill was that man to gel them, though, we weren't sure because he never had a job in football at a high level, like Premier League level. So it felt like a bit of an experiment putting him in charge. But I've got to say the players never let their heads drop, and they just suddenly sort of started to come together. And even in some of our best worst defeats, like the Arsenal 3-2, absolutely killed us. And mentally it could have shattered us, but it didn't, because the following week we went on to beat Liverpool 1-0 at home. And then it was these like sequence of results that instilled loads of confidence in the players. And starting to look the real deal. The new signings are, gelling in. Gary O'Neill seems to be learning on the job a little bit now. I mean, I think we probably could have got there faster, like to safety, with someone with more experience, but fair play to the board. They knew it might be a risk bringing in someone else. They stuck with him, and it's sort of seen that, maybe we were right to stick with him, because there have been some clubs that have changed their manager that haven't been so successful. For instance, like Southampton, we were on the same amount of points as them not long ago, and now we're 9 points ahead of them. So yeah, really delighted, and I'm having a relaxed conversation with you, mate, which is super.
Exactly. That's what it is right now. As we said before, like we started recording this, it was going to be a relaxed conversation. Both teams have stayed up. We haven't got nothing really to play for apart from league potential league finishes in terms of 11th, 12th. That's the debate that you can have. But other than that, we're comfortable. We're comfortable going towards the end of the season. But talking about Gary O'Neill, do you think he could be the man leading forward over the next few years? Is there still a bit of concern about his lack of experience? How do the fans feel? Because right now, you should be happy with how things are going. But looking at the long-term picture, do you think he's still the man?
I think long-term, we probably want a different face. But I'll tell you what, he's done really well to steady the ship after Scott Parker left. He did really well to pick the players up that were mentally on the floor after a 9-0 loss against Liverpool. We went on a great run when he was caretaker, but then as soon as he became permanent, that's when we all started to worry, like, okay, we've got this guy for 18 months now. But as a result of keeping us in the Premier League, he's now got another year. I think he's earned the right to do that. Whether he becomes unstuck next season, I don't know. But we have got a good squad, and we did spend sort of quite handsomely in the transfer window. And I know that a lot of pundits and a lot of people in the media look at little old Bournemouth, they look at our stadium size, which they're probably right to do, but we spent quite well. Therefore, we are looking to stay in the Premier League next season. It's hopefully not a case of treading water. Look, I don't think we're going to be pushing for Europe, but we would happily become a sort of mid-table side if we could. So yeah, I think Gary O'Neill's probably earned the right to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see where you guys go next season because, as you said, you have spent a good amount of money. You've also got new owners, ambitious owners from the outside looking in
Mm.
terms of they want to upgrade the stadium and the facilities around the club. So I think for Bournemouth, as a neutral looking at things over there, I think what you have to do now is try to grow the stadium, try to grow the
Yeah,
facilities, and become that mid-table club and naturally just grow. You know, you just have to stay in the Premier League because the Premier League is absolutely ruthless. One bad season and you're just out of it.
oh
So
god,
you
yeah.
just have to be consistently there. But in regards to your new ownership group, do you have faith in them that they could lead you in the Premier League up the table? Because you got Michael B. Jordan there as
Yeah, I
well.
know, it's
I mean, you got a
mental.
variety of people over there. So vast of experience. But yeah, what do you make of the new ownership group as well?
I was a little bit skeptical at first. One of the first things that our owner did when we were in the relegation zone, he came in and did an interview, and he said we won't get relegated. Which I thought, how naive is that? Because a lot of Bournemouth fans were thinking at the end of the season, this is going to get memed up. We're going to like the whole football world, the whole football community is going to jump on this. Fair enough. He put his money where his mouth is in January, but he's got some big ideas for the training facility. So we've got a brand new training complex that's underway that's going to sort of rival Southampton's in terms of size, and that's one over the years that's been churning out some really good graduates, and we're hoping to do the same. And the training facility at the moment is actually right next to the stadium, so it's important that one is moved before we can even think about doing the stadium. So that's going to get shifted over the next couple of years, and at that point we can then think about, okay, where we put the stadium. We want to put it near to where it is now. Probably can't upgrade where we're at because it's too close to housing, but there is a huge space of land next to it that it'd be great if we stayed in the area. And I think, I don't know what size would be good for us. I think 20 to 25,000, but we're not really a football town. And we have been trying to grow our fan base, and we almost grew too quickly. It became, League One, Championship, Premier League, and 11,000 seats is, it isn't good enough really. And there's been a lot of people over the last 10 or 20 years that have wanted to watch Premier League football, and we've lost out because people are just traveling 25 minutes up the road to Southampton. So, all of this young generation that we missed out on, but hopefully once we get a new stadium and get new fans through the door and start to build on our quite poxy attendances week after week. Honestly, it's so embarrassing when you watch Match of the Day and at the end they got the stats and then it says the score and then the attendance. The other week it was 9,800 something. It was so
9,000. Don't worry, Luton might be getting promoted, so
yeah,
you have a competition there with Luton.
Praying they go up.
Exactly. But no, all jokes aside, I think you made a very good point about growing the club, and there's only so much you can do because naturally, if it's a championship club, unfortunately, the youth they won't really attend as much because they want to. You have people supporting the Uniteds, the Chelseas. You want to compete with those clubs and be around that league. But if you grow the stadium, if you establish Premier League club, then naturally you can grow like that as well. So I think that's a very good point because Bournemouth, the area is very nice, so there shouldn't be any problems there. It's just the stadium and the facilities, really.
Exactly,
but then, as you said, there's plans to grow it like that. But in terms of Palace, what have we made of Palace? I mean, we spoke a few times on Dan Potts' channel about Palace, about Bournemouth as well. But we got rid of Roy Hodgson. No, not rid of Roy Hodgson. Maybe in 3 games time I could be saying that. Rid of Patrick Vieira. Brought in Roy Hodgson, who kept us up pretty comfortably and had some very good results. As a neutral, have you been surprised by Palace under Roy?
Yeah, I have a little bit because a lot. If you tune into Talk Sport or whatever, you got Andy Goldstein playing the dinosaur sound effects anytime his name is mentioned and stuff, and you could be forgiven for. But he seems to know the club inside out, and fair play to him. He has done such a good job. I remember tuning into Football's 12th Man podcast, and you almost wondered at times where the next goal was coming from, and just saying, I wish we could end the season now because it felt like you were dropping like a stone, and could they get caught in the mix? But thankfully, you've always been, just above it. But since then you've pushed on, and I think there are some matches that you played recently that that 4-3 over West Ham was a harem scarum match. You did the business against Southampton 2-0, which you had to, but it's those matches before that, the 2-1 over Leicester, I think, and then that 5-1 at Leeds, which was just that changed what I thought of Crystal Palace. And I thought, hang on, they could be pushing to actually be above Chelsea, come the end of the season here. I thought, I don't know what the long-term plan is, but I have been really impressed, and likewise, I've been really impressed with a number of your players that we would love to have as Bournemouth players. Like players like Eze, can play in the front three, but also through the middle as well. Still young, he's adding goals to his game. So I think he's a class act. Obviously Zaha as well, but you've got a number of players that I think are absolutely superb. And Roy's done well to steady the ship. Where you go from after that, though, not too sure.
Yeah, I guess we'll see in the summer. I think it depends on the next manager, really. Once we find our next approach in terms of the manager that we bring in, then I think it'll be a bit easier to predict where we'll be going. Because right now, I don't think Palace fans know where we're going. And there was this debate. I mean, next season, are we more closer to the relegation zone or to the top 10? Like, we just don't know. Because if we make a few signings, then you would assume top 10 would be more likely. But then again, you don't even know who's going to be leading these plays. And I think that's the biggest question mark with Palace. And that's why this summer is going to be massive for us. But talking about players and, some quality players on Palace side of things, but we've been also linked with a Bournemouth player. I don't know if you've seen Lerma.
Jefferson Lerma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think he's out of contract in the summer. There's a lot of Premier League clubs interested in him. So what's going on with that? Do you think there's a possibility that Palace could get him?
I think if he's going to go abroad, if he's going to move, I think he's probably going to go abroad because that's where his heart's always really lied. I think Villarreal are very interested. I'd be surprised if he went to another Premier League club. I know that West Ham are also interested as well, but he's been a superb player for us. He's part of the spine of our team. He's done so well. He's a combative, hard-hitting midfielder. Pops up with a few goals. Scored a worldie actually at Selhurst Park and a 5-3 loss on the last day of the season a number of years ago. It's absolutely
I remember
superb strike, hit the crossbar and in and bounced, and people were like, is it in? But it is. But it was. And we lost 5-3. I think we had Jordan Ide playing for us then who scored as well. So whatever.
Yeah, I remember. You've had some interesting plays over the years. The thing is, Bournemouth, even under Eddie Howe, you have spent a bit of money at times that you wouldn't expect Bournemouth to spend, such as to bringing in the likes of, I believe, how much has Jordan Ibe come to you guys for, or was it him that was?
He came for 15 million, which just burnt. We just burnt money on him really. But
Solanke as well. How much that
19.
was? Yeah, exactly. So when you think about the size of the club and you talk about attendance and all of that, it's still a decent amount of money. Even back then that you spent, but now you would expect you guys to spend a bit more. But so who's on form for Palace fans that don't watch Bournemouth? Who should we look out for in this game?
I think we got a few. I mean, like Philip Billings, a player that's always kind of mentioned in terms of other fans saying, "Oh, I'd quite like him." Plays in the attacking midfielder position just behind Dom Solanke. Really leggy player, runs more than anyone else. He's got this kind of aura about him that he's a bit lazy, but he's not. He's just got long legs. He strides around the pitch, but he's got a wand of a left foot. Absolutely superb. Links up the play really nicely. Dom Solanke's always a menace. I think probably needs more goals to add to his game, really. However, he always comes back a bit deeper, helps to create goals as well. And more recently, our on-loan left-back from Roma, Matthias Viña, he's popped up at Spurs, scored at Southampton. It was disallowed through the VAR, but and then at the weekend as well against Chelsea, he netted. Loves to get forward, but does leave our left side of defence a little bit exposed. So I'm pretty sure that if Roy Hodgson and his team are to do their homework, that's probably the side, your right side, where we'll probably have some areas. But and also Lerma himself as well, who's just superb. He's like our rock. And also Neto in goal actually as well, from Barcelona. It's just weird. Number 2 Barcelona keeper joining Bournemouth, firstly on loan and now permanently. What leagues are we in these days? It's mad. We're used to like signing players on loan from the National League and stuff. But it's it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And there are a number of players. But I mean, when we're on playing on our day, any player can be a menace, really.
Yeah. So how are you feeling ahead of the game? Because we had a disappointing defeat against Tottenham. It was not the fact that we lost 1-0. It was the performance. It was probably the worst performance since Roy has come to the club. We had the players on the pitch. We just didn't have the urgency to attack them and, exploit the weaknesses of Tottenham that we've known all along, which is quite surprising. But in this game, you would expect a response. But is there a sense of, over in Bournemouth side of things as well, that now you guys have stayed up, that you can relax a bit? Have you sensed anything like that in terms of performances?
Yeah, I mean, we're not mathematically safe yet. I think we only need a point, and there is a chance that before the game's kicked off, depending on the lunchtime game, we might be safe. But either which way, I don't know. There is an element of that. It's been a bloody hard season, and the players have put in a right old shift. And you know, they just want to enjoy their football now. And I kind of wouldn't be surprised if we went to Selhurst Park and not rolled over, but didn't perform to our levels. I'd like to see us push on. Look, for a club like us, every place in the Premier League is worth 2 million or something. So, you know, we might as well do as well as we can. And I think, but then in the same breath, I think Gary Neal, the manager, is going to use this opportunity to check out players that he might not usually use as well. So I would like to think we would go out and put in a performance, but at this stage in the season, it is hard to tell. And like you say, we may already be safe.
Yeah. So talking about score predictions, then how do you see it going? Because it's going to be hard for me to predict. I would think at home Palace should be favourites, but then again, that Palace side that I saw against Tottenham, it just didn't give me the confidence that it normally would give. But yeah, I'm not too sure yet. But what's your score prediction?
You know what? One thing I've noticed, I mean, apart from your match against Everton, and I suppose Southampton, they're usually high scoring affairs. So I think there'll be goals. I think you can be quite leaky. We've shown that we can. If you get any set pieces, just fire them into our box. We'll probably concede.
That's us as well.
Yeah, I know.
As well. Literally, that's us. That's how West Ham scored like 3 goals. Just literally right into the penalty box, and it's a goal straight away. At some point of the game, they didn't even try to score goals from open play. They literally went for a goal, and that's how it was. So that's funny. So look, and on 5-3.
Yeah, I have to be positive. I have to be optimistic, but my optimism doesn't go so far as to see us winning. I reckon 2-2 for this one.
Yeah, if I'm thinking about Palace switching it back on and trying to, play the football that we've been playing under Roy so far, I think it should be maybe 1-0 Palace, something tight like that. But it's hard to predict at this stage of the season because there's so many other factors that you just don't know about. You don't know where the players' heads are at. You don't know what the managers are thinking. But considering that we're at home and that it could be Roy's final 2-3 games at the club, I'm going to go for a positive result. I'm going to go for 1-0. But it could go both ways. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to, be sitting on the fence, but I am sitting on the fence. But look, it's hard to predict. It's literally hard to predict just for factors that's just outside of football. But it should be an interesting game. Let's just say that it should be an interesting game for both sides that have got quality players that, we should try pick out in defense and especially in attack as well. Because, I feel like both sides got some strengths and weaknesses. But before you do go, Sam, thank you for coming onto the channel. Where could they find your great work?
Just go to Back of the Net. Don't put an S in there because that'll get your channel, Back of the Net. We're ASCB Podcast on Twitter, and just type that on YouTube. You'll find us. We do match previews like yourself. We do match day vlogs as well. So we'll be taking our camera around with us. Also fan cams at full time outside the ground, that kind of stuff as well. So always interesting. Yeah,
so make sure to go check out Back of the Net, not Nest, because you're already here. Net, Goal Net. But look, thank you to Sam for thank you for coming onto the channel. Really appreciate your time massively. It's always a pleasure talking to you. But thankfully, we managed to have you on here. Hopefully, next season we can have more chats about both our teams doing well.
Definitely.
I doubt we'll be as relaxed as we are today. Let's just say that exactly. But look, thanks to every single one of you who has watched us as well. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have enjoyed the content. And until next time, up the Palace.